Welcome, dear listener. Settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your eyes grow heavy. And let the day you have carried slip quietly from your hands. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing else you need to do. Just here. Just now. Just the warm hush of a story. Unfolding slowly. Like a silk scarf loosened at the end of a long journey. Tonight, we travel together to a city of roses. Not the roses that grow in gardens, mind you, but a city painted the color of them. A city where every wall, every archway, every latticed window glows in a shade of soft, dusty pink. This is Jaipur. The year is somewhere near 1730, though time here moves like honey, unhurried and golden. And we have arrived, you and I, just as the sun begins its slow bow toward the horizon. Breathe in, gently. Breathe out, gently. Feel the warmth of the day still rising from the sandstone beneath your feet. The heat of Rajasthan is not harsh now. It is kind, like the memory of a hand on your back. A faint wind stirs, carrying with it the scent of jasmine blossoms tucked into the hair of women returning home from the temple. Somewhere a cow lows contentedly in a courtyard. Somewhere else a child laughs, and the sound is as round and ripe as a mango. We stand at the edge of the old city, where great gates are slowly being closed for the evening. The guards, in their turbans of saffron and dusty red, nod to travelers as they pass. Above us, the walls of Jaipur rise in their soft, rose-colored splendor, carved with tiny windows, jharokas they are called, where once the ladies of the royal household gazed out upon a world they were not permitted to enter. The windows are empty now, only the evening looks back. Let us walk together, slowly, down the wide central avenue. The city was designed, you see, by a young Maharaja named Sawai Jai Singh, a ruler, a dreamer, a stargazer. He laid out his streets in perfect squares, like a chessboard drawn by the hand of a philosopher. He believed that a city, like the heavens, should have order, that beauty and reason could live in the same house. As we walk, feel how the road opens before us, broad, generous, unhurried, as if the city itself is taking a long, slow breath. The bazaars are still awake, though their voices have softened into a drowsy murmur. You hear the gentle clink of copper pots being stacked for the night. A sweet seller folds silver foil over a tray of cardamom-scented milk cakes. A spice merchant bundles the last of his saffron threads into tiny twists of paper. The air is thick with cinnamon, with cumin, with the sugary steam of kheer cooling in wide clay bowls. A camel passes behind us, its bells making the softest music, and then is gone. We linger a moment. Let us simply be here. Above the rooftops, the sky is beginning its great, slow transformation. The blue of the afternoon has deepened to the color of a Kashmiri shawl, violet at the edges, rose at the center, threaded with the faintest gold. Swallows turn in lazy circles, their wings catching the last light. And there, do you see it? The very first star. Small and patient and silver. It has been waiting all day for us to notice it. This is the hour the people of Jaipur call Godhuli, the dust of the cows. The moment when herds return home and their footsteps stir a golden haze into the air. It is the oldest hour in the world, and also the gentlest. The hour when grandmothers light oil lamps in doorways. The hour when grandmothers light oil lamps in doorways. When fathers return from the fields. When the earth seems to sigh softly and settle into its own dreaming. And somewhere, at the heart of this pink and quieting city, something wonderful is waiting for us. A place of great stone instruments, vast and strange and beautiful. Sundials taller than temples. Staircases that measure the moon. Bowls cut into the earth to catch the light of the stars. It is called the Jantar Mantar, the observatory of a king who loved the sky more than his own throne. But we will not go there yet. Not tonight. Tonight, we are only arriving, only breathing, only letting the dust settle, and the stars appear, and the evening wrap itself around us like the softest of shawls. Rest a moment here with me. The story has only just begun, and the night, dear listener, is long and warm and kind. Let us begin, then, in a place far from here and long ago. Picture, if you will, a palace in the soft hours before dawn. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and of the cool stone that has held the night. Somewhere beyond the lattice screens, a peacock stirs. A lamp burns low in a small chamber, and in that chamber a boy is awake, though the rest of the household sleeps. He is perhaps 11 years old. His name at this hour is simply Jai Singh. In time, he will become Maharaja Sawai Jai Singh II, ruler of Amber, founder of the rose-pink city of Jaipur, and one of the most patient watchers of the sky the world has ever known. But not yet. Tonight he is only a boy with a book open on his knees, and a small brass astrolabe resting beside him like a sleeping animal. He traces the engraved rim of the astrolabe with one fingertip. He has done this many times. He knows its curves the way other children know the faces of their nurses. The Arabic letters around its edge are old friends to him. He whispers them under his breath, the way another child might whisper a lullaby. It is said that even as a small boy, Jai Singh was a quiet child. Not shy, exactly, but listening. Listening to teachers, to priests, to traveling scholars, to the slow creak of the palace at night. He loved numbers the way some children love stories. And he loved stories too, especially the ones told in the language of stars. His tutors brought him the great books, one by one. They came wrapped in silk, bound in worn leather, their pages soft as moth wings. There were Sanskrit manuscripts, the Surya Siddhanta among them, with its ancient rhythms of moons and eclipses. There were the works of the Islamic astronomers, copied and recopied across centuries, the ink of one scribe atop the ghost of another. There were translations of Ptolemy of Alexandria, that far-off Greek who had once tried to map all the heavens in a single careful book. The boy read them all. Slowly, over and over. He learned the name of Ulik Beg, the prince astronomer of Samarkand, who 300 years earlier had built an observatory of such size and beauty that its arc sank deep into the earth, curving through the stone like the rim of a stilled wheel. Jai Singh loved the thought of that observatory. He would close his eyes and try to imagine it. The marble, the shadows, the quiet scholars moving along its great arc like ants along the edge of a bowl. He learned the names of stars the way some children learn the names of horses: Rohini, Aldebaran, Chitra, Spika. He let the syllables soften on his tongue. And slowly, gently, a small conviction began to grow inside him. It grew the way a seed grows, beneath soil, unseen for a long time. The conviction was this: that the instruments the world had so far built for measuring the heavens, the brass astrolabes, the little quadrants, the delicate rings of metal no larger than a plate, were too small. Too small for such an enormous sky, too small for the slow, grand wheeling of the stars. The heavens, he felt, deserved better. The heavens deserved to be measured with stone. Stone that would not warp in the sun. Stone that would not tremble in the hand. Stone large enough that the very shadow of the earth's turning could be read across its face, like writing on a page. He did not speak of this, not yet. He was only a boy. He tucked the thought away, in the quiet pocket of himself where the best thoughts live. And he kept reading. The years passed softly over him. He grew into a slender young man with watchful eyes and an unhurried manner. He became a Maharaja, though the crown always seemed to sit upon him more lightly than the books did. He served the Mughal emperor in Delhi. He fought wars when he had to. He governed with care. But always, beneath the business of kingdoms, the thought remained. The sky was waiting. The sky deserved stone. And so, little by little, in the warm margins of his days, he began to plan. He gathered scholars from Hindu academies and from Islamic courts, from Persian libraries, and, in time, from faraway Europe. He gathered the old books and the new. He gathered patience, which is the rarest instrument of all. He was, you see, preparing to listen to the heavens, preparing, with all his careful, quiet heart, to build the largest ear the stars had ever been offered. But that, dear listener, is a story for the next soft turn of the page. And so the page turns, softly, softly, as if pressed by the hand of someone who does not wish to wake a sleeping child. Word travels, you see, in the way that word always traveled in those long, lamp-lit days, not with the bright chirp of a telegram, nor the hurried flash of a distant screen, but slowly, by ink, by tongue, by the patient clip-clop of a courier's horse moving along roads softened with dust the color of warm honey. The Maharaja's invitations went out like little paper birds, folded and sealed and pressed into the palms of trusted messengers. Some traveled north, toward Delhi, where old Pandits still sat cross-legged beneath neem trees, their spectacles resting low upon their noses, their fingers stained with the quiet blue of ancient ink. Others drifted east, toward Varanasi, Kashi, the city of lamps, where along the Ghats the river Ganga murmured her endless lullaby, and where astronomers had, for centuries, traced the orbits of stars onto palm leaves by the light of ghee-soaked wicks. Imagine them, if you will, receiving these letters. An elderly scholar, gray of beard and slow of step, unrolling the parchment by candlelight, reading the careful Persian script, then closing his eyes just for a moment and smiling the particular smile of a man who has been waiting all his long life for precisely this invitation. And so they came. They came upon camels whose bells chimed softly through the hush of desert nights, each footfall a gentle pressing into silver cool sand. They came upon camels whose bells chimed softly through the hush of desert nights, each footfall a gentle pressing into silver cool sand. They came in bullock carts that creaked like old wooden doors, stacked high with manuscripts wrapped in saffron cloth. They came wrapped in shawls of wool, the color of fading marigolds, their satchels heavy, oh, so heavy, with treatises on trigonometry, with star tables copied by monks 100 years dead, with diagrams of eclipses sketched in trembling hands beneath the flicker of oil lamps. From Persia they came also. Across the great warm plains of Isfahan, past the turquoise domes that caught the morning sun, the Persian astronomers set forth. Their beards were oiled with rose, their robes deep as pomegranate wine, and they carried with them the old wisdom of Ulugh Beg, that sultan astronomer of Samarkand, who, 3 centuries before, had mapped the stars with such tender accuracy that his tables were still whispered about, still copied, still kissed on the forehead before being set upon a scholar's desk. These Persian travelers crossed mountain passes where the air grew thin and the night grew velvet black. They slept in caravanserais whose stone walls held the memory of 1,000 weary heads, and when they dreamed of constellations. But the Maharaja, ever curious, ever reaching, he looked further still. He sent emissaries, dear listener, all the way to Portugal. Think of that. Think of the courage, the quiet audacity of it. Men mounted upon ships whose sails bellied fat with salt wet wind, sailing beneath moons that scattered silver across the Arabian Sea. They passed Goa, where the church bells rang across palm fronds. They rounded capes. They waited, sometimes for weeks, in harbors where gulls cried the soft gray cries of morning. And when at last they arrived upon the Iberian shore, they walked into libraries smelling of leather and sea air, and they asked, politely, patiently, for the newest star charts. The Jesuits, in their black cassocks, received them kindly, rolled up maps of the heavens that showed Jupiter's moons, that traced the wandering paths of comets, were pressed gently into their hands. And then, with these precious papers tucked deep within waxed leather pouches, the emissaries turned once more toward home. One by one, 2 by 2, small clusters of scholars, they began to arrive in Jaipur, a city still half-dreamed, still being born from the pink rose stone of its own imagination. They arrived at twilight mostly, when the air smelled of jasmine and wood smoke and the distant frying of cumin seeds. They were met at the gates by servants bearing brass lamps, and they were led through courtyards where fountains whispered to themselves in the gathering dusk. Rooms were prepared for them, cool stone chambers with woven mats upon the floor, a low writing desk, a copper bowl of water, a small bowl of almonds and cardamom. They set down their satchels, they removed their travel-dusted shoes, they breathed, and slowly, as the days softened into weeks, they began to gather in the Maharaja's garden, beneath the shade of tamarind trees. They spread their manuscripts open upon long, low tables. They compared notes. They argued, gently, the way scholars argue, more like the cooing of doves than the barking of dogs. And Jai Singh walked among them, listening, listening, listening. gathering their wisdom the way one gathers petals before they fall. Gathering their wisdom the way one gathers petals before they fall. And then, one morning in the year 1724, the listening quietly turned into doing. No fanfare, no trumpets calling across the rooftops, only a small gathering at the edge of the royal gardens, where the earth had been smoothed and swept, and a single slab of pale sandstone waited on a bed of straw. A priest murmured old words into the morning air. A mason dipped his fingers into a bowl of cool water and touched the stone, the way a mother might touch the forehead of a sleeping child. And Jai Singh, who had listened so long and gathered so much, knelt and helped to lay the very first stone of Jantar Mantar. It made almost no sound, just the soft shush of stone meeting earth. A small beginning, the way every great thing begins. From that quiet morning, the work spread outward like a slow tide. Carts arrived from the quarries, drawn by patient oxen whose breath rose in the cool dawn. They brought sandstone the color of honey, and marble the color of moonlight, and lime for the plaster, white as a crane's feather. The blocks were rolled down wooden ramps on logs, guided by ropes thick as a man's wrist, and the ropes creaked like old doors in an old house, and the men sang as they worked, low, unhurried songs passed down from their fathers and their fathers' fathers. Chisel against sandstone makes a sound you can almost fall asleep to. A soft tap, then another. Tap, tap, pause, tap. It is the rhythm of patience itself. And all across the site, from before the first light until the stars returned, that rhythm went on, steady as a heartbeat beneath the skin of the day. The masons of Jaipur were quiet men, with sawdust in their beards and sums chalked on the palms of their hands. They did not shout or hurry. They measured and measured again, and then once more for good measure. For these were not ordinary walls they were building. These were instruments, vast sundials, star-reading steps, climbing staircases meant to catch the shadow of the sun as it passed. A mistake of even a finger's width could send a calculation astray by years. And so the masons worked the way one threads a needle by candlelight, slowly, tenderly, almost lovingly. There was a particular old mason, it is said, who could feel when a stone was true. He would close his eyes and run his weathered palm along its face, and he would nod, or he would shake his head, and no one ever argued with him. He had learned this from his grandfather, who had helped build temples in the south. Stones, he liked to say, were only sleeping mountains. You had to wake them kindly. By day, the city of Jaipur went about its busy life. Merchants called out the price of saffron. Children chased kites across the rooftops. Camels padded through the pink lanes with bells softly ringing. But at the heart of it all, in a wide courtyard open to the sky, the observatory was rising. Quietly, the way a dream rises in a sleeping mind. And at night, oh, at night, the sight grew stranger and more beautiful still. The workers would go home to their small lamp-lit houses, and the half-built shapes of Jantar Mantar would be left alone beneath the stars. Imagine it, a triangle of stone rising half-finished against the black sky, a curved marble bowl still unfinished at its rim, catching moonlight like water. A flight of steps leading upward, and then, for now, leading only into the deep hush of night. A flight of steps leading upward, and then, for now, leading only into the deep hush of night. The very instruments that would one day measure the heavens stood like shy children beneath them, unfinished, patient, waiting. Sometimes Jai Singh himself came in those quiet hours, wrapped in a shawl against the cool desert night. He would walk the half-built courtyards alone, touching the new-cut edges of stone, looking up at the stars he was preparing to welcome. One can almost see him there, a man in his early 40s, a king, but in that moment only a dreamer, with his breath fogging softly on the sandstone. And slowly, stone by stone, season by season, the observatory grew. Monsoons came and went, washing the site clean. Summers came and went, and the masons drank water from clay pots and wiped their brows and carried on. Winters came, gentle in Jaipur, and the chisels kept their quiet rhythm. A dream, being rendered patiently into stone. A sleeping city, unaware that above its rooftops something magnificent, something eternal, was very quietly, very lovingly being born. And then, one morning, it stood, the Samrat Yantra, the supreme instrument, the king. If you have ever stood at the foot of a mountain and felt yourself grow small and still and quiet, then you know something of what it feels like to stand here, in the soft hour just after sunrise, looking up at this great stair of stone as it climbs toward the sky. Nearly 90 feet it rises, 90 feet of patient, pale masonry, angled with the precision of a sleeping swan's neck, pointed always, always toward the pole of the heavens. A staircase that goes nowhere and everywhere at once. A staircase that climbs, quite simply, into the turning of the world. They call this upward blade the gnomon. A beautiful old word, soft as a whisper. And oh, this one knows. It knows the hour. It knows the minute. It knows, with a tenderness that seems almost impossible for stone, the passing of every 2 seconds of your life. On either side of the gnomon, curving outward like the open palms of a mother waiting to catch a falling leaf, lie the 2 great quadrants. Marble, smooth as cream, inlaid with lines as fine as the veins on the underside of a rose petal. Each line a minute, each mark a breath, each hairline groove a tiny doorway, through which time very quietly walks. And all day long, across that gentle marble, a shadow is crawling. Think of it. Think of how slowly, a shadow thinner than a ribbon, moving with the grace of a cat stretching in the afternoon. It does not hurry. Nothing here hurries. It simply travels, with the patient certainty of the earth itself, across the cool white surface of the stone. 1 inch, another inch, the length of a finger, the length of a yawn, the length of a held, contented breath, and in that creeping dark line, astronomers in their soft muslin robes could read the hour of Jaipur to within 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Imagine a sundial made by hands that had never seen a gear or a spring, measuring time with a truthfulness that most of our modern watches, in all their whirring complication, can scarcely better. This is what love looks like when love builds a clock. In those early days, when the Samrat was newborn and the mortar barely dry, the astronomers would come at dawn. They were called the Jyotishis, the keepers of light. They wore cottons dyed in soft saffron and the pale green of young wheat. They wore cottons dyed in soft saffron and the pale green of young wheat. They carried ink pots and folded charts and small brass instruments that chimed faintly against each other as they walked. And they would climb. Up the long, gentle stair of the gnomon they went, step after careful step, their sandals whispering against the stone. They climbed to greet the sun. There is no other way to say it. They climbed as one climbs to meet a beloved old friend on the morning of their return from a long journey. At the top, they paused. The wind up there was cooler, and it carried the scent of jasmine from the gardens below and, faintly, the smoke of the city's first cooking fires. Pigeons turned in slow circles against a sky that was just beginning to remember the color blue, and the sun, rising over the Aravalli hills, would lay its first warm hand upon their faces. They would bow, softly, the way one bows in a temple. And then, slowly, they would descend back down the long stair to begin the day's kind and meticulous work, to watch the shadow walk, to mark its passage in their ledgers, to speak of it gently to one another in the shade of the cool arcades. Every day, this. For centuries, this. The shadow slipping across the marble like a thought slipping through a quiet mind. The astronomers bending close, their faces lit from below by the whiteness of the stone, their fingers tracing the little lines. A city going about its business beyond the walls. Water sellers calling, bells ringing, the slow bray of a patient donkey somewhere in the lanes. And up above it all, the Samrat Yantra, the king of instruments, standing as still as a mountain, as precise as a prayer, measuring out the minutes of the world with the gentleness of a grandmother counting beads. It is still there, even now, even tonight, as you lie here listening, its shadow is moving, somewhere in the moonlight, across that old, patient marble, measuring the quiet, quiet hours. And now, let your footsteps carry you, softly, softly, to another corner of the courtyard. The moon leans a little lower. The stones beneath your feet grow cooler. And here, sunken gently into the earth, you come upon something that looks almost like a dream someone forgot to wake from. Two great marble bowls, hemispheres, scooped into the ground as if a giant, long ago, had cupped his hands and pressed them, palms up, into the soil, and then quietly walked away. These are the Jai Prakash Yantra. Their name means simply the light of Jai. And in the hush of night, they seem to hold that light still, pooled in their pale marble curves like milk in a saucer. Imagine them now. Each bowl, perhaps 5 paces across, sunk so deep that you could, if you wished, step down into one and stand at its lowest point and look up and find the whole dome of heaven mirrored around you in stone. For that is what these bowls were made to be. Not bowls at all, really, but skies. Inverted skies. Cool, patient twins of the night above. The old astronomers, the ones who worked here by lamplight and moonlight, they understood something very lovely. They understood that the sky, that great turning thing, too vast to hold, too high to touch, could be brought gently down to earth, could be laid out, curve for curve, arc for arc, in marble, so that a human hand might trace what a star had done, so that a human foot might walk where a constellation had wandered, so that a human foot might walk where a constellation had wandered. And to do this, they carved the bowls with the most delicate lines. Arcs of hours, arcs of degrees, the tropics, the equator, the meridian, all cut softly into the stone, as if someone had been writing letters to the heavens and left the pages open to dry. If you were to kneel beside one now, and run your fingertips along those grooves, you would feel the slow, warm scratch of centuries. You would feel where rainwater has smoothed them, where dust has settled, where the small feet of pigeons have stood for a moment before lifting away. Now, between the two great bowls there are ribs, narrow walkways of marble, laid across the hollows like the spokes of a half-wheel. And this was the cleverness of the old stargazers. For they could not stand in the center of a bowl, you see. Their shadow would spoil the reading. Their breath would fog the stone. So they did something far more graceful. They slipped, sideways, between the marble ribs. Quiet as cats. Quiet as thought, and they lowered themselves down into the empty spaces of the bowl, crouching beneath the arcs, peering up, through the gaps, and overhead, suspended from a fine crossed wire, hung a single small ring, a ring of metal no larger than the inside of your own palm. That ring was the sky's little door. When a star rose, when a planet drifted, its light would fall through that tiny ring and cast a small, clean circle of shadow upon the marble below. And the astronomer, folded there between the ribs, would read that shadow the way you might read a letter from a friend. Softly, without hurry, simply noting where the light had chosen to land. Think of it. A man in white cotton, robes gathered about his knees, balanced in the hollow of a sunken sky. Above him, the real stars. Around him, their marble reflections. And between the two, a single ring, no heavier than a bangle, translating the whole universe into a small, round whisper of darkness on stone. There is something so tender about it, that the cosmos, which is so large, so impossibly large, would consent to be read through a little ring, that it would lean down, patiently, and place its shadow exactly where the astronomer was waiting, as if the sky were kind, as if it wished to be understood, and as you breathe here, in the moonlight you can almost see them still, the old readers of the bowls, moving between the ribs with the careful grace of people who have learned not to disturb the quiet. Their lamps shielded, glowing amber, their voices, if they speak at all, hushed to the softness of falling petals. They are not in a hurry. They have the whole night, They have, in a sense, all the nights there have ever been, and above them the stars turn, and below them the stars turn too, and in between, in that small suspended ring, the light passes through and through and through, measuring, marking, whispering its slow, slow secrets to the waiting marble. And now, as the last coin of daylight slips beneath the western wall, the observatory exhales. The stones, which have drunk the sun all day, begin to give their warmth back to the evening air, and a soft heat rises from the pavements like breath from a sleeping animal. The pink city dims to the color of old roses. Lanterns bloom along the garden paths one by one, each tiny flame a small, quiet promise against the coming dark. The stargazers do not hurry. They never hurry. They never hurry. They move between the instruments the way monks move between pillars, with the unhurried certainty of people who have learned that the sky keeps its own appointments. A boy with ink-stained fingers carries a tray of oil lamps, setting one at the base of each sundial, and the marble answers back in pools of gold, soft as lullabies. Above them, the first star arrives, just one, a single silver stitch in the deepening blue. No one points, no one exclaims. They have all been waiting for it, the way you wait for a familiar footstep in the hallway, and its appearance is more greeting than surprise. A second star follows, then a third. Soon the whole velvet cloth of Rajasthan is embroidered with constellations, and the observatory, which looked so solemn by day, becomes a cradle lit from within and above. The chief astronomer seats himself on a worn cushion beside the great equinoctial dial. His beard is the silver of clouds in moonlight. He wears a shawl the color of river water, and across his knees rests a brass astrolabe rubbed smooth by a lifetime of patient fingers. Beside him kneels his youngest apprentice, a child no older than the reed pen in his hand, whose eyes are still wide with the wonder of being allowed to stay up so late, so close to the stars. The old man whispers, only whispers, for sound at this hour feels like a guest who must tiptoe. He names the altitude of Jupiter as though naming a friend. He speaks the slow westward slide of the moon in numbers so gentle they sound like a song. And the boy writes, dipping his reed into a little brass pot, letting the ink bead and shine and settle into careful Persian script across the page. Dot, stroke, curl, dot, stroke, curl. The scratch of the pen is the softest music in the courtyard. Other scholars drift among the instruments like boats on a still pond. One climbs the long ramp of the great sundial and lies back against the warm stone, looking straight up, tracing the river of the Milky Way with a finger as though stirring milk in a bowl. Another bends over a small bronze quadrant, turning its arm in tiny increments, hearing the satisfying click that generations of hands have taught it to make. A third sits cross-legged with a chart unrolled across his lap, the parchment weighted at its corners by 4 smooth pebbles, each one collected, long ago, from the banks of a different holy river. And the constellations drift. They drift with the silent dignity of a turning wheel. No rush, no noise, only motion so patient it could be mistaken for stillness. Orion lifts his belt above the eastern wall. The 7 sisters glimmer low, like a handful of pearls spilled across a jeweler's cloth. Far to the north, The pole star holds its place, the one unmoving lamp around which all the others revolve, and the astronomers have built their whole courtyard to point at it, the way a flower points at the sun. A night bird calls once from the gardens. A camel bell sighs somewhere beyond the walls. The city, beyond its pink ramparts, is falling asleep in the ordinary way, under ordinary roofs, with its ordinary dreams. But here, in this quiet geometry, the astronomers are awake with the universe, and the universe, it seems, is awake with them. Hours pass, though no one counts them. The lamps burn lower. Oil sinks. Wicks lean. The apprentice's eyes grow heavy, and the old master notices, and without a word he lays his shawl across the child's shoulders. The apprentice's eyes grow heavy, and the old master notices, and without a word he lays his shawl across the child's shoulders. The boy does not quite sleep. He is somewhere softer than sleeping and gentler than waking, adrift on the hush of his teacher's voice, hearing the numbers come like waves that will not break. Above them, a meteor draws a single thin line across the sky and is gone. It is not written down. Some things, the old astronomer has decided, belong only to the night that held them, and the slow wheel turns and turns and turns. From the slow turning of that wheel, from the patient nights stitched together by breath and starlight, something quiet begins to gather. Not a monument this time. Not a great curve of marble or a sundial tall as a cliff. Something softer. Something that can be folded and carried and read by candlelight in a distant room. A book. Or rather the beginning of a book. A long, hushed procession of numbers, each one a small remembered star. In the scriptoriums of Jaipur, the scribes sit cross-legged on woven mats, their pens dipped and lifted, like birds drinking from a still pool. The air smells of rose water and ink and the warm paper of the palace presses. Outside, the courtyards cool beneath jasmine. Inside, by the soft light of oil lamps, numbers are gathering themselves into rows. Each row is a star. Each column is a careful whisper. They are writing the Zij-i Muhammad Shahi, a great table of the heavens, dedicated to the Mughal emperor whose name it will carry across centuries. Z, a word old as the deserts of Persia, old as the libraries of Baghdad, meaning a catalogue of the sky, a quiet ledger of where the lights have been and where, gently, they will be again. Jai Singh presides over it with the same tenderness with which he walked among his instruments at dawn. He compares the old tables, those of Ulugh Beg in Samarkand, Ptolemy in Alexandria, Tycho Brahe, who measured from his small Danish island, with the fresh figures drifting in each morning from the terraces of Jaipur and Delhi. Where the numbers disagree, he does not scold the ancients. He simply notes the difference, as one might note that a river has widened a little since last summer. Slowly, page by soft page, a new picture of the sky emerges, the positions of stars refined by a hair's breadth, the motions of planets smoothed, the equinoxes, those hinges of the year, set a little more gently into place. And then, as all beautiful things must, the book begins to travel. Copies are made. Not many. Each one a quiet act of devotion, bound in leather or silk, the numbers inscribed so carefully that later readers will run their fingertips along the columns as though touching a coastline on a map. One copy rides north with a courier, wrapped in cloth against the dust. It passes through the groves of mango and tamarind, past villages where smoke rises in slow blue columns at evening, past rivers that shine like spilled mercury beneath the moon. It reaches Delhi, and from Delhi it enters the great library of the Mughal court, where scholars in long coats lean close and murmur its numbers aloud as if reciting a poem. Another copy is carried further still, across the dry plateaus and the patient mountains, along the ancient Silk Road whose dust has already remembered 1,000 kingdoms. Another copy is carried further still, across the dry plateaus and the patient mountains, along the ancient Silk Road whose dust has already remembered 1,000 kingdoms. It arrives in Samarkand, that fabled city of blue domes, where the observatory of Ulugh Beg once stood, where his own star table was written 3 centuries before. Here Jai Singh's pages meet their elder sibling on a shelf, and the two lie side by side, the old tables and the new, like grandparent and grandchild breathing quietly in the same room. Yet the journey does not end there. On a merchant ship, folded among maps and spices and letters written in 5 languages, another copy crosses the warm seas. The sails fill, and empty and fill again. Gulls follow. Stars wheel overhead, the very stars the book describes, as though the sky itself were escorting its own portrait toward Europe. In Paris, beneath the painted ceilings of the Académie, scholars unwrap the volume and fall silent. They had not known. They had not quite imagined that, in a distant pink city in Rajasthan, a prince had been listening so carefully to the same heavens and writing what he heard in such a steady hand. In London, too, at the Royal Society, fingers turn the pages gently. A gentleman astronomer adjusts his spectacles and whispers a figure aloud. It matches, almost exactly, one of his own observations from Greenwich. He smiles the smile of someone who has found a friend he did not know he had. And so the measurements taken on those cool Jaipur terraces by an astronomer who chose silence over glory, by a prince who bowed to the sky, begin to stitch themselves softly into the shared memory of the world. Copies on horseback, copies under sail, copies resting now on distant shelves in distant cities, each one holding, between its covers, the quiet breathing of Jaipur's nights. The stars, it turns out, had been speaking the same language all along. It only took a patient ear to write their words down. And the slow wheel, turning still, carries the lore onward, and the wheel does turn slowly, softly, as the years gather themselves like dust on a sun-warmed stone. In the winter of 1743, Sawai Jai Singh closes his eyes for the last time. The city he dreamed into being goes on without him, as cities do. The bazaars still open at dawn. The camels still groan their morning complaints. The pink walls still blush at sunrise. And in the quiet courtyard of the Jantar Mantar, the great instruments stand exactly where he left them, as though waiting for him to return with a new question for the sky. But the questions, for a while, grow fewer. The astronomers who served him do not vanish all at once. They linger, as people linger in a house where someone has just stepped out. They still climb the steps of the Samrat Yantra at noon. They still whisper numbers into their notebooks, but the notebooks fill more slowly now. The ink dries longer in the well, and one by one the patient hands that once smoothed the brass and chalked the marble grow older, and then quieter, and then still. The observatory does not fall silent. It simply begins to listen instead of speak. The monsoon comes, as the monsoon always comes, wrapping Jaipur in soft gray veils. Rain taps the curved belly of the Jai Prakash Yantra, like someone testing a drum. Rain slides down the great triangular gnomon, cooling the stone that has drunk so much sun. Rain slides down the great triangular gnomon, cooling the stone that has drunk so much sun. Rain gathers in the little hemispheres and turns each of them, for one evening, into a tiny sky of its own, holding a single trembling reflection of the moon. When the rains pass, the instruments gleam as though freshly polished by unseen hands. And perhaps they are. The monsoon is a patient craftsman. Each year it rounds the edges a little, softens a corner, darkens the marble, where water has learned to rest. The numbers carved into the stone grow a shade less sharp, the way a well-loved lullaby grows a shade less urgent with every child it sings to sleep. Seasons fold into seasons. The pigeons discover the arches and decide they are perfect. A family of green parakeets takes up residence in a high niche and raises generations of chicks who have never known a sky without this strange, sunlit geometry beneath it. A gecko learns the exact warmth of the noon shadow and returns to it every day of its small, precise life. The city dreams on, and the instruments dream with it. Children come, of course. Children always find the places grown-ups have stopped guarding. They race along the ramps of the Samrat Yantra, their bare feet slapping the sun-heated marble. They crouch inside the great bowls of the Jai Prakash and whisper, delighted, when their voices come back to them soft and cupped. They invent games whose rules only they remember. They turn the observatory into a playground, and in doing so, they keep it alive in the only way that truly matters, by loving it without needing to understand it. An old gardener sweeps the courtyard each morning, humming a tune he learned from his mother. He does not know what the instruments measure. He knows only that they are dignified, and that dignity deserves a clean floor. He trims the grass that creeps between the stones. He brushes the fallen leaves into small, tidy piles. He nods to the great gnomon as he passes, the way one nods to an elder one has known all one's life. Decades slide by like clouds across the face of the moon. Travelers come occasionally, curious officers, wandering scholars, a painter or two, and stand in the courtyard with their mouths slightly open, as people do when they encounter something they were not prepared to feel. They sketch, they measure, they write letters home. Some of the letters survive, folded in distant archives, yellowing gently. Others do not. And that is all right, too. The observatory does not need to be remembered everywhere. It needs only to be here. And here it remains, through dry years and green years, through weddings in the lanes nearby and funerals carried slowly past its gates, through the coughs of winter and the long honey-colored afternoons when nothing at all seems to happen in the whole wide world. The measurements Jai Singh once took, the precise angles, the painstaking transits, the careful columns of figures, these begin quietly to dissolve into something larger. They become part of the memory of the city itself, part of the way the light falls at evening, part of the way the shadows lean. The stars have not stopped speaking. The observatory has simply learned to listen without a pen. And the slow wheel, turning still, carries the lore onward. The evening has deepened now, and Jaipur has softened into something quieter than a city. The markets have folded their colors away. The camels have knelt into their stables. The pigeons have tucked their heads beneath their wings on the warm rooftops. And above it all, the sky has turned the particular blue that only comes in the last hour before full darkness. A blue like steep tea, like the inside of a river stone, like the hush between two notes of a lullaby. Step with me, gently, back into the Jantar Mantar. The gates are closed to visitors now. The guides have gone home. The children who ran laughing between the sundials this afternoon are already halfway into their dreams. And the instruments remain. They have always remained. They will remain long after you and I have stopped listening. The marble is cool beneath the palm. You can feel how the day's sun has drained slowly out of it, the way warmth leaves a cup of milk set on a windowsill. The white stone glows faintly, as though it has saved a little of the afternoon to offer back to the stars, and the stars, one by one, are accepting. There, the first of them, a single patient pinprick above the Samrat Yantra, and another near the curve of the Jai Prakash, and another, softly, above the Ram Yantra's open bowl, as if the sky were lowering a quiet lantern into waiting hands. The night wind has arrived. It is a gentle wind, an old wind, the same wind that moved across these stones when Jai Singh himself walked here in his embroidered slippers, murmuring numbers under his breath. It travels now across the smooth throat of the great sundial and slips down its long staircase. It hushes along the rim of the hemispheres. It circles the zodiac pavilions the way a cat circles a sleeping child, carefully, without waking anything. Listen, you can almost hear the constellations moving, not loudly, never loudly, just the faint, patient turning of the wheel, the same wheel Jai Singh mapped with his astrolabes and his charts and his careful candlelit hours. Orion is rising somewhere beyond the eastern wall, his belt gathering itself as it has for 10,000 years. The Great Bear is wheeling slowly toward the north, and the moon, when she comes, will lay her pale hand across the marble and find, as she always finds, that the instruments are still here to greet her. Jai Singh is long gone. His astronomers are long gone. Their ink has dried, their pages have yellowed, their voices have softened into the long and gentle silence of centuries. But the shadow they taught these stones to cast, that shadow has not ended. Right now, somewhere on the broad face of the Samrat Yantra, a sliver of moonlight is beginning its slow, quiet crawl. It will move only a little before the sun returns, only a whisper of a shadow. But it will move. It will keep moving. It has been moving patiently for 300 years. Think of that as you let your eyes grow heavy. Somewhere, in a quiet courtyard in Jaipur, a patient shadow is tracing its slow path across warm stone. It is not hurried. It is not troubled. It is not asking anything of the world. It is simply keeping time, the way a grandmother keeps time, rocking in a wooden chair, humming a song whose words she no longer needs. And you are held within that same turning, the same stars that bent above Jai Singh bend above your pillow. The same moon that silvers the marble tonight is silvering the edge of your window. The same great, unhurried wheel that carried his astronomers into morning is carrying you now, softly, towards sleep. The same great, unhurried wheel that carried his astronomers into morning is carrying you now, softly, towards sleep. There is nothing left to measure tonight. There is nothing left to chart. The numbers have all been written. The sky has been mapped and mapped again, and still it arrives each evening, faithful as a friend, asking only to be looked upon with wonder. So let your breath grow slow. Let your shoulders settle. Let the warm white stones of Jantar Mantar hold their vigil without you for a little while. The observatory does not need your watching. The shadow will keep moving whether or not you follow. The constellations will turn whether or not you count them. You have been a good traveler tonight. You have walked among old stones and listened to an old sky, and now the evening is gently folding its pages closed. Somewhere in Jaipur, a shadow is tracing its quiet path across marble. Somewhere above Jaipur, the old kind stars are keeping watch. And somewhere, softly, you are already beginning to dream. Sleep well, dear listener. The stars will still be here.